So the what I wanted to look at is just it's 3 psukim in the parsha. I've kind of jumped a little bit around, and I apologize for that. But these 3 psukim that I want to look at are very they're very simple in their thing, but there's quite a bit behind it that I'd like to see. So if you look at Bamidbar Gimel, that's chapter 3, verse 11. So it says everything in this whole parasha is all about the differences between Bnei Israel, the Leviim, and then we throw in the concept of the Bechor as well. And this is really where we see the difference here. So the Torah says, "Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, va'ani hinei lakachti et haLeviim mitoch Bnei Israel." So Hashem says, "I've taken the Leviim from Bnei Israel. I've taken the Leviim from within the Jewish people, tachat as why? I've taken them as a replacement of kol bechor peterechem, of all the bechor, which are the first of the womb of their mothers, Bnei Israel, va'yuli haLeviim, and the Leviim are mine. Why? Kili kol bechor b'yom hakoti kol bechor b'Mitzrayim, because the bechor was mine from the day that I attacked and destroyed all the bechorim, all the firstborns in Mitzrayim. Hikdashti li kol bechor b'Yisrael. I sanctified all the bechors, all the firstborns in Israel. Me'adam ad behema li yu ani Adonai. They are mine, from man to animal. They are mine. So it seems to be a little bit of a mishmash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu first says that the Leviim are mine, then he says that the bechor is mine. So let's try and understand this. It's clear that there is a little bit of tension between the bechor and the Leviim. So let's try and understand that at least to a certain degree. So Rashi tells us, what does it mean? Behold, I took. Rashi says, so it says, where did I get the Leviim from? So it says, mitoch b'nei Yisrael, shayu Yisrael sochrin otam l'sherut sheli. It says, did the b'nei Yisrael, are they the ones that kind of like they employed the Leviim to be to my service? He says, no, I took them. They're mine. I took them. Al yedei bechorot zachiti bahem lakachtim timuratam. Says through the bechorot, through the concept that there was already the bechor, I then took the Leviim and I switched them out. Why? Because initially the bechorot, the firstborns were the ones that were zoiche, that were merited to be the ones that would serve Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash. But then there was a problem. Where did they lose that schut? So this morning I spoke about, this seems to be the loss of the schut was that they didn't stand up to, according to one opinion, that they didn't stand up when Moshe Rabbeinu was at the Egel Azav, and he said, Mila Hashem Elai, who's going to fight on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with me? And the only ones that stood up were the Leviim. But Rashi now throws in something that's a little bit more than that. He says, why didn't the Bechorim stand up? The Bechorim who was, or Bechorot, depends how you do it. Why did they not stand up? They are supposed to be the ones that are devoted to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he says, that the Bechorim seemed to be that they were actually involved. It wasn't that they just stood passively by, but they actually sinned at the time of the Egel HaZahav. Some of them, all of them, few of them, not sure how many. But since they did that, they didn't remove themselves from that. They got kind of like caught up in the excitement of what was going on. Therefore, nifsalu, they became pasul. But the Leviim never served Avodah Zarah. They never served the Egel HaZahav in any way. Nivcharu tachtem, they take their place. So what's happening here is that there's already a designated place for those who are going to be the servers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a direct manner on behalf of Bnei Israel. That's the Bechor. But what happens with the Leviim is because the Leviim don't serve Avodah Zarah, they are able to take the place of the Bechor. Why is that? Because the Leviim become the most profoundly connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi says, the Ibn Ezra says, lakachti. says, "V'ani hinei lakachti et levim." I took the levim. The Ibn Ezra says, "Ma'aleh gadolah levim." There's something very special about the levim. What is this ma'aleh gadolah of the levim? So there's a commentary on the Ibn Ezra. So the Ibn Ezra is a Rishon, and then you have the Avi Ezri who comments on this concept, and he says, "What is this idea? V'hinei ani lakachti." Where do we get this concept of lakachti? Lakachti is lakachtim b'dvarim. We see vayikach Korach. Korach also, it says he took. How did he took? He took with words. And so therefore, so to hear that the concept of lakachti is that I'm putting in effort. I'm putting in effort because it's meaningful to me. I'm putting in effort to develop the appropriate approach with my words to be able to take those people onto my side. So to HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, because I love the Levim so much, because I'm so happy with what they did, because they're on such a high mile, on such a high level, I'm going to put in the effort to take them, excuse me, from their position of just the Levim to being now the position of the people that are going to serve me directly. Why? He says so the Torah says Kili kol b'chor. Sorry, let me go back. Sorry, the Malbim says that why is it that he says that initially we know that initially there were the b'chorot. The second is that why does what is this whole business of the 5 shkalim? Why do you have to pay for because there is this concept of the fact that the Bechor, the firstborn, also has to, that we have to redeem the firstborn. Why is that such an important thing? If we just simply switch them out, why is the firstborn still in some way connected into the Beit HaMikdash that he still needs to be redeemed? So it seems to be that the reason for that is that even though the Levim took their place, there is an inherent connection of the Levim, of the Bechor to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is this concept of Petei Rechem. The first child that comes out of its mother's womb is most connected to the partnership of creation of Hashem, of the mother, the father, and Hashem. And because of that, that partnership needs to in some way be extracted or broken, and that's how we do that with the 5 slaves. So even though they no longer are going to be doing the service, they still, says the Malbim, still are going to have to be extracted out of that out of that thing. The Kili kol Bechor says, because why? Because the Bechor are mine as well. How did I become to be the one who owns the Bechor? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because of what happened in Mitzrayim. Because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed the Bechor in Mitzrayim, so he somehow took ownership of the Bechor, of the firstborn of every Jew, because they should have also been killed. But because Hashem didn't want him to, so therefore he didn't. So asks the Kli Yakar, and he says, Sho'el ani she'ela achas. So I just want to ask one question. Im natan Hashem lelevim b'minui zeh ma'ila v'shrara. Says if HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Levim this elevated status and this rulership, ki ivdil otam me'adat Yisrael la'amod l'sharet lefanav. Says if that's the case, then what's the whole thing when it says Kili kol Bechor? Says if he gave the Levim, then why is the Bechor so important? He says, hold on a second. Hashem never gave the Bechorim the right to be the leaders. That just is what happened as a natural thing within the world at that time, that the firstborns always just were the boss. That's how it was. Says that and also that when Hashem actually didn't kill the Bechor of the Bnei Yisrael and Mitzrayim, it's not that he gave them any elevated position, but rather he actually made it more difficult for them. So therefore, how can you compare the Kedusha of the Bechor to the Kedusha of the Levim? And that's a very, very important question that he's asking, is that the one is there to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says, Vadai says it's very simple. Vadai, that the Levim, the opportunity given to the Levim is not an opportunity of Havdalah. He was Mavdilim. He separated them out. He made them so much more important. He says, and before the avodah that the Bechorim had, and that became possible because of the Eila Hagazav, which he then gave to the Levium. At the end of the day, what happens is that that the Bechor is now in a way had a primary obligation to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you have the Leviim who are given the opportunity, but the Bechor had originally this primary obligation to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that way. But because they messed it up, so says the Kliyakar, now what they have a knas. It's like a tax on them, a fine on them. The tax, because sheyesh aleim shetziltem min ha'mavet. The truth is that Hashem saved them from death, and if He had saved them from death, the Bechor should have been so grateful that at every single opportunity, every single parent should have taught their firstborn that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved them, and therefore they should focus and dedicate themselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But they didn't, and we saw that at the Egel HaZahav. And therefore, since they didn't do that, therefore they're obligated to now redeem them with these 5 shleim, with these five coins, as a firstborn is born. And we have this concept which we know is called the pidyon ben. It doesn't always happen. We know that because of certain halachic things where, for example, a child is not born from a natural delivery, but then there's no pidyon ben. There's all these different laws within pidyon ben that they don't happen that often nowadays because of the there's a big move on cesareans, but that's okay. It's got to be peterechem. It's got to come out of a natural birth. But the bottom line here is that the Leviim maintain their kedusha, whereas the Bechor, in the way at least the Kliyakar is explaining, is that whilst they should have some primary role, they don't get it anymore because they messed up with the Egel HaZahav, and since they messed up with the Egel HaZahav, therefore they lose that right. And I think part of that is something that we're learning out of that, and that is the importance of firstly Hakaras Hatov, of being grateful for that which Hashem does for us, and because of that gratitude, we have to pass that on from one generation to the next. That's part of the process of Pesach and all of the Chagim. We're coming up to Shavuot. It's not just about sitting and learning on the night of Shavuot. The sitting and the learning is really an expression of gratitude and recognition of the love that we have of the Torah that Hashem gave us. We have that same idea on Pesach where we sit, we teach our children, and that's part of that is so that we can ensure that they recognize the role that they need to play. In the world in which we live, I feel that it's a very it's a space where people feel entitled. Entitlement, I think, leads to difficulties. And if we can teach our children and teach ourselves that it's not about entitlement, but rather it's about hakarat hatov, but rather it's about acknowledging the good that others have done for us, that humbles us in a certain way, and in humbling us in a certain way, it gives us an opportunity, as the Ibn Ezra described the Levim as a mala gedola. It can be an unbelievably high level for us to achieve great things because we recognize from whence it comes. If we can do that, I think our connection to Hashem is greater, our connection to one another is greater, our derech eretz is greater, and in that way we can grow in great kedusha. And please God, that all this Torah that we're learning should just be in the merit of all of Am Yisrael who are currently going through great difficulties, as we all know, and it should be towards shalom in Eretz Yisrael. And please God, we should just know no more sorrow and only have peace going forward. Have a beautiful Shabbos and a beautiful Yom Tov. We'll pick up again, please God, on Wednesday morning.
God, thank you.